Well, when you have your best interview ever, you just can't
Oh,
stay with one. You gotta come back and do another one. So, Dylan, thank you very much for agreeing to come back. Maybe this one won't be quite as, crazy as the last one. We're going to talk about all the different gourmet detective episodes, but I just have to thank you once again for
oh,
last time. We've had so much feedback from literally
that's great.
everybody in the Hallmark fandom world, so thank you.
I obviously had a lot of words to get out. I'll let you talk a little bit this time out if this is the sequel.
I
Yeah,
definitely
no,
think
it was good. I'm obviously still getting over my PTSD from having worked at Hallmark for so many years. I have some words to get out apparently.
This podcast was created by fans for fans and is not affiliated with or sponsored by Hallmark or the Hallmark channel.
it was good. Like I say, it was great getting that little peek behind the curtain. I'm sure there's, if we had everyone else and everyone else was willing to be candid, we would have, a lot more stories out there.
Well,
But
as we talked about this, actors will never be candid with you, and it's not because they're bad people, but they're protecting their jobs and they're being good people. Like what I always contemplate is we have such a weird job, actors or anyone in the media, because we're asked to, in a very public forum, whether it's in a podcast or a late night TV talk show or in a big magazine where it's literally millions of people are going to read or watch, and you're asked to comment on your colleagues and your boss and the company you work for and maybe a particular project, and just turn it around and imagine if that was you, if you're Joe Guy in your office or you're a plumber or whatever it is. Are you honestly going to talk bad about your boss who you think is a complete idiot and incompetent, or your company which you think is near bankruptcy or just a complete failure, or your colleague who you just can't stand for X, Y, and Z reasons? Are you going to do that in front of millions of people? Probably not, especially if you need your job or if you think that you ever want to work in your industry again. So actors are not going to generally be honest with you. They're going to sugarcoat things. They're going to give little white lies or just complete lies that you will never know. Because let's face it, most of the jobs we work on, we're not terribly thrilled with. And here's the acid test always. You can tell when an actor is lying when they get the question, why did you choose this role? And if the actor says anything other than, now I'm not talking about the Tom Cruises of the world, right? Sure, there's A-list actors, the gajillionaires who literally do choose what they're going to work on, right? 99% of all actors on the entire planet don't choose what they're going to do. They auditioned, or if they're super lucky, they were offered a job, and they say yes because they have to put food on the table, because they have a mortgage or they have rent. And being a freelance artist is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult. Of the union actors in SAG, of which is very difficult to become a union member, right? Like you have to kind of work for a while and prove in your merit with a number of jobs to even qualify to be in the union. Of union members, the old stat was always uh, about 10% make more than $25,000 a year. Nobody makes a living in our industry. Everyone is a waiter, a bartender. They have three other jobs, and then they occasionally get a guest star or maybe a recurring. Nobody makes a living in our industry. So when you're lucky enough to actually get a job, the answer is yes, because you have to pay bills. But what happens is, especially when you're younger, and if you suddenly get into a position where you're going to give an interview, remember, most actors don't even give interviews, right? Because they're day players or they're guest stars, are not necessarily giving interviews. But once you get to that level where people are asking you for interviews, you're probably going to get asked that question right up first. And you have a split second where your whole world shifts because you suddenly realize, oh crap, I can't give the real answer. And it all washes over you in a millisecond. Oh, right, this is all smoke and mirrors. None of this is real. Every question you ask me, I'm going to have to spin this. I hadn't thought of this. Because your knee jerk reaction is not to say, well, I needed the money, because that doesn't really sound good. Sometimes you do, and it can be funny. But that's why everyone starts going, oh, well, I thought that the material was really great, and I was really interested in working with so and so, and I think that the message here is really in blah 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 blah, and that may all be true. Often it's not, and it may be true, but the real answer, the only real honest answer, is you needed the money and you got lucky and you got hired, so of course you said yes. Now, over 37, I'm almost 40 years in this industry. I have said no a couple of times, because even at my low standards, I've occasionally go, I can't do that. I can't stoop that low. Thank you, but no thank you. I can't do it. Or I've had a particularly good year, and I have the good fortune to be able to say, you know what, guys, I'm not going to take that one. I'm good right now, just spending the summer with my family. That is so rare. I've had so few amazing years, over 40 years in this industry. Most have been treading water. You know, your nose is just above the water. You have a good year, you pay off debt, you kind of get back to neutral, and then you pray that you can keep building on it, you know? That's the reality for most actors. So again, I'm so long-winded. Oh my God, Eric.
No, it's fascinating. So,
We
but
didn't even
you,
get to your first question yet.
well, we're going to go off of that once again. We just roll with it. But you're also a little bit different there too, because you're not just a writer, or excuse me, an actor, but you're also a writer, which is doubly that, right? Because you're just independent contractor upon independent contractor.
Yeah.
So
And I'm married to a freelance artist. Never do that. My wife and I would both say, don't ever do that. If one of you is going to be the child and not join the real world and get a real responsible job, then your spouse better, because you're going to need that person to be the responsible adult and pull in some kind of regular income. We've been two freelancers for, in my case, almost 40, for Becky, you know, a little less. It's ludicrous to think that you can raise children and have a house under those conditions in LA, of all places. You know, we're so crazy lucky, but there's been a lot of hardships along the way too.
So
Like
just curious, along those lines, to do a typical, let's throw out Hallmark, let's just say in your world, a typical thing, like of the 12 months in a good year, how much do you actually work?
Oh, you don't work at all, right? So your actual job as an actor is to audition. That's your real job, and you don't get paid for it. Or actually, it costs you money. Now it costs more than ever. But back in the day, you would go into a room, right? And you're up against dozens or a couple of hundred people, and your objective as an actor, and this is what I would teach, because I do teach it on occasion. I actually really enjoy teaching. You suddenly realize that you do know a lot after a couple of decades. Your job as an actor is not to get the job, it is to impress the room, so that if for some reason you're not right for that role, they're going to remember you, so that the director or the casting director or the producer is going to go, hey, Eric's not right for this one for X, Y, and Z reason, but man, he's really good, isn't he? Yeah, he's got this thing about him. I'm going to remember him. Or you're writing a couple of episodes later on a TV series, and you call casting and you go, hey, bring in Eric for this one. He was so good. I think this is going to fit him. That is the job. That's the actual job of an actor when you go into an audition. If you get the job, that's just gravy. That's a bonus. So that's how you have to approach the work. And so you do that all throughout the year. I might have, when you're in your 20s, that's when you're busiest, right? Because Hollywood feeds on youth. So when you are a late teenager to late 20s in the business, professionally working, that's when you're going to have the most auditions you'll probably ever have, because the machinery of Hollywood feeds on pretty young people, especially young people. But if you're pretty, that's even more useful. Generally speaking, if you're a really talented character actor, also super useful, but that's a separate topic. And so you might have anywhere between 80 to 100 auditions in a year. And that's your full-time job. And you're probably going to have a part-time job actually paying the bills during all of that. But when you work, let's say you do, so an average year might be like 2-3 guest stars when you're coming out. An average year might be like 1 or 2 guest stars, and maybe you get a commercial. Well, a guest star might be 1 day, right? So you work 3 days that entire year. A busy year and you're not like a series regular, right? You're still hustling. Let's say you get 3 guest stars and you've got a recur that gives you maybe 4 episodes. So again, a guest star can be anywhere from just 1 day to out of a 5 to 7 day shoot. Maybe you get 3 or 4 days. So let's be generous. Let's say it's 3 days per guest star. So you got 3 shows as a guest star. There's 9 days. And then if you had a recur, that's juicy. Now, back in the day, we used to have primetime broadcasts. So you do 24, 22 to 24, even 26 episodes. Those days are winding down, right? Like, I can't remember last time I worked in broadcast. Everything's streaming, right? And you only do 8 to 12 episodes. That's why nobody can make a living anymore, by the way. You also don't get residuals on streamers. So you have a recur. Maybe it's only 1 or 2 days for 4 episodes. So let's give it 8 days. So 9 and 8. You got 17 days over the course of an entire year. You might make enough money. Maybe if you get top of show, there's different classifications of how you're paid in our industry by union. It's not amazing money. If it's a kind of a show where it's going to be in repeat in a good way on broadcast, then you're going to get some residuals, but it maybe doubles your money in the next 18 months. It's not as though you're suddenly making big money, right? It's always going to be less than what you actually made the day of or for that job. So, could in that scenario, could you make $50,000 to $100,000? Like if your recur has a special deal where you get more than just bottom union wages, like you're able to negotiate a fee. There's quite a range with how much you could be paid in there. But if you're young, you have no leg to stand on. And in fact, nowadays, nobody makes any money. I mean, our industry is completely broken. Nobody's making any money. I don't know any friends who are not completely panicked about how they're going to make a living. But 9 days let's be generous. Let's give them a whole month. A whole month would be that's a pretty good year. And then you hope to get to the next level where, wow, you're really on fire and you're working quite a bit. And then the holy grail for actually making a living is to be a series regular, or at least heavy recur on maybe more than one show. So you could have 2 shows, and maybe you're in every episode as an important character, but for whatever reason, they either can't afford to make you a series regular, or more likely they're trying to avoid making you a series regular just so that they can save money. That goes on too. So you kind of get screwed over just because they can kind of wing it that way. You're not working. You don't work.
That's bizarre.
But you're auditioning a lot when you're young. So you are busy. It takes hours to prepare. So I just had an audition the other day. And I have to record. So what we have to do nowadays is record everything ourselves, right? You're never walking into a room anymore. I mean, I'm in Portugal, so I'm not walking into a room anyways, but nobody is, even in LA. How the old days, you get the sides. The sides are the material. It's either 1, 2, maybe 3 scenes of the character that you have to memorize. And then you'd spend hours on that, right? You have to prepare like a real actor as though you're going to do it for real. And then you go to the casting office and you see the dozens of other people that look exactly like you, the same size and age, and you probably know each other and go, hey, Bill, good to see you again. Wish you luck. Hope you choke. And you go in one by one, and it might be days worth because there's a lot of people. And the more important the role is, the more people are coming through. And there might be a callback where there's less of you. And that takes hours of prep. And then you have to learn how to audition, be in the room. There's a whole learning curve that goes beyond just performing. You have to know how to perform at an audition. And how do you meet that room? The skills have to be learned there. That's all gone. Now we just self-tape. So you got to buy your lighting equipment and have all the sound and all of that stuff. You know that as a podcaster. And record it. And now who's reading with you? Is it your poor spouse who's stuck reading with you the whole time? That's probably not the best use of her time. Or for you, is you're not going to get a professional reading. So now we have these online actor sites where there's professional actors waiting all day long to be pinged. Hey, are you available for 1 hour? And you get paid for your time depending on what your fees are. So I
got to sign up for that.
I use a service called weaudition.com, and it's only $10 a month if you want to stay on retainer. And then whenever I need an audition, I go on there, and there's actors from all over the world. So no matter what time zone you're in, there's always an actor up, like lots of actors up. And you can look up who they are, their profile, and what they charge. You tell them, hey, I've got one scene, I only need half an hour, and they've got a fee for that. Or it's like, oh my gosh, I got 4 scenes, it's going to be at least an hour, you know. And if you need someone with an English accent, you got all of Britain online, and you got like a legit Brit speaking terrific British accent, or you know, you can find someone in New York or LA. So I have to time my auditions for later in the day in Portugal, so I can grab someone in New York or someone in LA. Sometimes I'll grab someone in England, but I don't love always having the strong accent coming through for what I'm doing. It just takes you out, you know, for the casting office. But I have to do that. So I've spent hours learning my lines and preparing. It's not just memorizing, right? Like you're preparing. How do I stand out? How do I really nail this role? Because it's a competition. An audition is a competition. It's like being in a tournament, like a tennis tournament or a golf tournament, except instead of only being against 20 people, you might be against 100 people. And unlike golf or tennis, where like the 5th place person still makes $100,000, 2nd place gets 0. Only the winner gets paid, right? And in this case, I'm actually paying for the privilege to audition. So I then have finished the audition. Now I download I got to go through all of my scenes, right? I've had multiple takes per scene. So just the other day, I had 7 scenes. Insane. It was 7 scenes that I had 2 days to prepare for. I had probably 35 to 40 takes. Afterwards, I had to comb through each single one of them to think, which one do I want for each scene to represent my choice? And you focus and you over and over, and you look for the little nuances, like, oh, I think that one's better. Oh, but let me go check that one. It takes hours. Then you got to edit the beginning and the end, right? Because you're like talking with buttons and talking to the guy. You ready? You ready? Okay, I'm going to go now. Okay, and go. So you got to edit that stuff out, right? You put it all together. Then you got to render it, get it onto your computer. Then you got to upload it to the casting site. So yes, that 7 scenes took me 5 hours from the time I started taping to the time I uploaded. Not counting all the hours that I was working on the material. That's for the privilege of never hearing anything about it. Because they're not going to tell you didn't get it. You just get silence when you don't get something. You only hear if you actually got it. That's been my life for 40 years, right? It's like, hey, anything? Anyone? Hello? Crickets? Sometimes if it's a more important role, your agent can call casting, hey, can we get some feedback for Dylan Neal? He felt he really did a great job there. And sometimes they'll be honest and they'll go, hey, you know what? Yeah, they really did like what he was doing, but they went a different direction because of X, Y, and Z reasons. Or if they've got nothing to say, just to be polite, they'll just say, yeah, they went in a different direction, but they actually don't. They don't even remember you. Or sometimes, especially when you're younger and you're looking for some positive feedback, it's like, hey, what can I learn from this? What did I do right or what did I do wrong? They might say, hey, he really liked you. We felt like he wasn't quite assertive enough in that particular scene, when you really needed to lay into that other guy. We just felt whatever it is, right? There's something maybe you can learn from and go, oh, thank you. So all of that stuff, though, we used to get in the room. So back in the day before COVID and we all just started getting cheaper and doing self-tapes, we would be in the room with a casting director and a director and a producer, and they would give feedback in the room. You'd do your scene, and they go, hey, Dylan, that was great. Hey, let's do it again. And this time, you know what I want you to do? I want you to really think about how your wife is dying a little more in this scene, the subtext that is written there. I didn't feel quite enough of your pain there. Can we do it again? And I just want you to, whatever it is, right? They'll give you a little bit of direction if they're interested. If they're not interested, they'll go, that was great, thank you very much. And that's it, right? You're like, oh, okay. But if they're interested, they'll give you a little bit more, they'll give you some direction. That's all gone. So now we're just guessing, all of us. We're just guessing at, and I'm experienced. I'm probably going to be spot on or at least very close. And sometimes there are callbacks even, and it'll be on Zoom. Like, hi, Mr. Director. Hi, I'm in Portugal. How you doing? He's like, hey, we really liked what you did. I just wanted to talk to you about it. Can we do something a little different on this take so I can see you? And anyways, you got to reel me back, Eric. I'm just going to go forever and ever.
No.
Sorry.
That's, like I say, it's super interesting. And like I say, this is what we talked about before. All right. Well, since we last talked, I a couple big things have happened in the world of Hallmark. One, Lisa Hamilton Daly is out. Darren Abbott is in.
Well,
I'm
Darren was
personally,
always there, right?
yeah,
Darren
yeah.
was always there.
But as far as head of the network now, and
I think he
the
already
program,
was.
but
Well,
he
they've
wasn't in
eliminated her
program,
job. He's
right?
not necessarily it either. They've just
Okay.
eliminated the job, which is very interesting.
Well, so for me, I'm a marketing guy, and what I know is I know brand, I know how to do, events and how to do, partnerships and things like that. I don't necessarily know storytelling. I certainly don't know programming per se. And so, like, what do you think about a marketing? Because that's from when you're, just reading his like real strength. Like, and
So
you say not
that's
having
Bill
a Lisa
Abbott.
Hamilton Daily.
That's
Like,
Bill Abbott 2.0. That Bill came from sales, and that's not an unusual position actually to come from a pure business side of a large corporation to run the thing. What you would expect from those people is that they would then hire and know where their weaknesses are. So Bill had a senior vice president of programming in Michelle Vickery, but he basically tied her hands behind her back to not completely be able to do her job because he weighed in on everything. I was going to give quotes there. I can't. I won't. I won't cross that line. It made it very difficult for Michelle at times, and she was open and honest about that. Bill, as we talked about last time, I think I talked openly. Bill made development very, very challenging, and I would say, in my own personal opinion, it's just my opinion from all of the projects that I've had there over a decade. He made everything worse. So when you have a guy who's a branding executive, it doesn't necessarily mean he's the wrong guy at all. It is telling that they've eliminated that job of senior vice president in programming. Now, does that mean that the people under Lisa who were doing the active day-to-day development of movies are just going to carry on and there might be a little bit of overlap? Do they feel that they can actually do the job without that position and that senior executives, and Randy Pope, I believe, is still there, and then Mr. Abbott and whoever else has a senior position when it comes to choosing what new pilots may get done? Will it just be a team effort of raise your hands, along with some trusted development execs? Like they do have a senior exec in charge of scripted development and production. That was someone who worked on all the gourmets, who I know quite well. So usually you do have that position. I would say it's mildly embarrassing to be a network and not have a senior vice president of programming, but Hallmark has never done anything, I would say, in a fairly logical manner. They just never have. We were talking privately. Every department at that place has had a screw loose. When my lawyer, I was telling you, I'm with one of the biggest law firms in town. My guy routinely works on $50 million deals with the biggest A-level stars. I can't believe he represents me. It's almost like a favor. It's like I'm embarrassed he would have to do my Hallmark contracts. And he had nothing kind to say about their business affairs. And he actually wondered if they were, well, either just completely incompetent or outright crooks with what they're trying to do. And I'll say Hallmark has always played hardball, as any business should. To be fair, it's a business, right? And you better have your big boy pants on when you're talking about money and contracts. So that's all right. That's why I have a big gun behind me to know the law where I don't know the law, and I'm not supposed to. I can't do everything. I'm not supposed to be an entertainment lawyer. But they don't mess around. And they're frugal because they have to be frugal. They're a little network. They only have so much money. And I mean, I could just go on and on and on. The way they would do things were sometimes just mind-boggling. And you got the result, right? Like, I don't think Hallmark has made as good a product as they could. I have nothing against family friendly. Like I said, I like family friendly. I just don't think that they've delivered the goods on it. And obviously they're not even happy internally, because you don't get fired because things are going really well. I don't know Lisa, so I have nothing negative to say against Lisa. They never reached out to me. I mean, we did a few things. Beck and I were hired to fix some scripts after the Gourmet, since we had moved to Portugal. And I did have a couple of things in development. And I think I alluded, I just couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't take the notes that I thought were insane. So I just walked away. And I kind of blew that up, actually. I should have probably handled that a bit better. But enough was enough of the 12 years of PTSD. So, but I don't know Lisa, but I do know from the one script that we were given to fix, it was ludicrous. It was by someone who'd never barely written before, certainly not in the union. And it was like a high schooler could have done a better job. And like, how do you get to be a network and be that far along in development on a script where that guy had no business handing in or being hired to write a professional script? I've also been hired by the union to do arbiting when there's discrepancy on who should get writing credit on a script. It will go to arbitration at the union to determine who gets credit. And it matters because whose name is on the script and in the titles is the one who gets residuals, right? So it really matters if there's a disagreement on who contributed what to a script. And if I remember, it's about 30%. You need to have contributed at least 30% to warrant having your name on a script. And so sometimes it goes to arbitration, and the union calls members who have a particular reputation or specialty in a genre. And so I've been approached on, hey, can you help us out with some arbitration on a Hallmark script? And I get every single draft of a script by all the different writers, and I can see from day one how something develops, what contributions have been made. And I'll tell you, some of the scripts I get are just Mickey Mouse scripts. And there's lots of reasons why that is. They don't pay well. They like hiring sometimes non-union writers for obvious reasons, trying to save money, but you get what you pay for. And if you make your business model to be more of a widget factory where you're going to make 100 movies a year with only X amount of money that you have, and you're going to just take your smallest amount of margin of profit, that's a business model. But I guarantee you, no movie studio makes 100 movies a year. And if they did, they can't be good. You can't make 100 good movies a year. You don't have enough manpower and you don't have enough money. It's an impossible job. So you're a widget factory, and they know that. They know that. I'm not making them out to be villains, because you've only got two choices, right? If you've got a couple $100 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but no network has enough money. Like, it's so expensive to run a network. You have two choices. You either make as much as you possibly can in product and skim as much margin at a smaller margin level off of all of it to make a profit. That was Bill Abbott's choice. Or you make less product, you put bigger budgets, and you spend more time on them, and then you hope that you grow your audience by being known as making a quality product. And maybe try swinging for some awards. Or you bring in some bigger hitters from the writing and producing side and go, hey guys, look who we brought in. And everyone goes, oh my God, multi-Emmy award winning so-and-so, right? Oh my God, Hallmark, serious. That's how you can also get attention. And look, I was never on the business side. I haven't seen their books. I don't know their liabilities. I don't know what problems they have dealing with their advertisers, because that's the problem too. You got to make product that your advertisers know they're getting X amount of eyeballs, and those C3 plus numbers. This all gets into the business side, and Hallmark had a really tight, very savvy network of business people all over the country selling advertising based on the material that's coming through, based on audience retention. And that's where those numbers are so important, down by the minute, right? Like, Hallmark product is measured by the minute when you're watching a movie, because it matters. How much retention after the first act? How much did you lose going into the second act, third act, fourth act? Which is why us writers are given very strong parameters of your first act cannot be longer than 22 pages. It must be at least 19 pages because our stats tell us we lose audience every minute you go over before the first commercial break. That's why I have to deliver a movie in the final cut at exactly to the second. My edit has to be to the second because commercial breaks have to be exactly spaced because that's what keeps the lights on. So that's all kind of the fun stuff you learn as a writer-producer of how the sausage is made. And that's at every network, right? That's not special to Hallmark. When you are in broadcast television, the whole industry is kept on by advertising. With streaming, you have a much looser, freeing experience because until now, they've never had commercials. So this week, your episode is 43 minutes and your next week is 54. That's fine. We don't care. There is no schedule by the hour throughout the day that has to be kept on track because we have ad rates and we have advertisers that we have to answer to. There were no advertisers on Netflix at first. It's just like, it's subscription. Take within reason as long as you need to tell your story. So a lot of writers, big names, even took less money initially to go to Netflix for that freedom to get that, the restraints of broadcasting cable off their back to be able to be real storytellers. Because sometimes you're so tied up to try and condense your story or having to stretch it. And also telling 24 episodes a year in broadcast is such a marathon. It's a real grind. That's why often and especially in procedure, actually, and dramas too, middle season sometimes gets a little laggy because the writers are just dying on fumes. And that's why the writer rooms used to be so big. You need a lot of brain power to bring in material to keep it moving through 24, 26 episodes. Anyways, I'm so off topic, Eric. I'm stopping.
No, that's good.
Stopping.
Well, it's like, once again, we learned so much. Well, the next question, you kind of segued into a little bit back there, but another big thing in news was Brooke Shields recently was interviewed, and she talked about how Bill Abbott signed her to a 14 movie deal, which is crazy if we think about it. Like, we think, when the Hallmark just did their exclusive recently, it was like 3, maybe 4, and 14. She did 3 Flower Shop Mysteries and said, I'm out of here. I came aboard because I was promised I could do comedy. And they were definitely not on the same agreement of what comedy was, which immediately everybody started sending us messages. We went there to exactly, you made that comment of Bill didn't know comedy, to which, like, I don't know if it's the right question, but it just exactly, she just echoed, I guess, exactly your frustration there. And I mean, I'm sorry, you're a huge deal to us. You know, Henry Ross, we love him, but Brooke Shields is literally a world icon, right? And for her to walk and have that same sentiment.
So a couple of thoughts. Number one, I really hope she got a pay or play on that 14. Something tells me she didn't get it because Bill would have been batshit crazy to give her a pay or play 14 movie deal before the first one had been filmed. But I hope she got that. That's a big chunk of money. And she has the lawyers. There's a possibility she had a pay or play. So what that means is, right, if you have a pay or play, that means we've signed the deal. If you don't make it, I'm still getting paid. So go ahead, make whatever decision you want, but I'm getting paid for 14 movies. So I doubt Hallmark had the cojones to do that. And that was probably just promised, just like I was promised there are going to be lots of gourmets, right? So yes, Brooke has always loved sitcom work. I remember interviews with her, I think always loving Lucille Ball. Look, Brooke loved broad comedy. And, people who saw Suddenly Susan and other stuff, she likes to go pretty big. That would never have played on Hallmark. And actually, in my own opinion, I think it's the wrong choice for Hallmark. Brooke, on the one hand, is the right name for Hallmark. What she would probably want to do, and I don't know Brooke, maybe I'm completely wrong, but you can't do broad comedy on Hallmark, and it wouldn't have worked the way she might have wanted to do it. And I think I remember watching a little bit of that Flower Shop, the very first one, and I might not have this right, but I think my memory is telling me Brennan and Brooke are doing 2 separate movies, and that's up to the director to nip that in the bud right away, or the network to get involved. I could see, this is just memory, maybe I'm getting it wrong, but I remember, Brooke's trying to push, and they're not going to like it. And Brennan was doing, like, I think, cool guy in that movie, and I think there was a bit of a miss. So yeah, Bill would never in a million years allow what Brooke would want to do, from my understanding of, the sitcoms and stuff she had done. And absolutely right, Bill should never be around comedy. Never, ever, 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 ever be around comedy. Actually, I Bill should not have been involved in development. You have to be involved in big decisions around casting and direction of the network. Absolutely. Like Les Moonves running CBS, he had senior vice presidents of programming for a reason. You hire them because they're really good at their job, or they should be. And yeah, you can weigh in here and there. And granted, Les Moonves was an actor. I mean, Les has forgotten more about storytelling than Bill ever knew. But you have to hire people and let them do their job. And then if you don't like what they're doing, fire them. But don't hire them and then you just do the role as well. And particularly if you're not well suited for it. And we all know that's not just my position. There's not one person who didn't suffer under that regime of how Bill ran that. And all of his executives were terrified of him, of knowing he was going to say something. I would have notes all the time on my gourmets that were contradictions of themselves, because I knew that the note, it would say go left, and then the one would say go right. And I knew that Bill had come in after the notes had already been written and inserted his own, or his assistant had inserted his, and it completely contradicted what the real exec who was responsible for my movie was saying. And so they would throw up their hands and go, you better go right. Yeah, no, I was wrong. You should go right. Yeah. And you would get fired too. If you disagreed, you get fired. Ask the first senior vice president of programming before Michelle, Barbara Fisher.
Right. Well, we promised we're going to talk Gourmet Detective, so let's talk Gourmet Detective.
All right.
Just a global question, first of all. You been in a variety of movies, like you said, your 40-year career. You didn't seem like you're really like in the mystery, whatever genre. So what was it that prompted you and Becky to say, hey, we want to create a mystery, like, The Pie in the Sky or Peter King's Gourmet Detective there? So what was it that said, hey, this is a direction we want to go at all?
I think I touched on this in the last one. So because of Cedar Cove doing pretty well, and I think I tested pretty well for them, and I had a good relationship with Bill and Michelle at that time, and they wanted to do more with me. And I was looking at what can I do here in a family-friendly network? And I wanted to not just be a one-off. I wanted to live a little. And so I had seen that there had been some murder mystery movies, and I was most impressed by Tom Selleck's, I can't remember the character's name, something Stone Mysteries on CBS.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned the story that Michelle was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're bringing that up, because we are in the midst of private secret conversations with Tom Selleck right now about bringing that mystery series to Hallmark. Yeah, do that. She loved that idea. And so that's why I figured I could make a franchise out of a murder mystery. And then I went on to food, and I talked about that in the other one. And I never wanted gourmet. I wanted to be Pie in the Sky, because I knew the books were so difficult and in my opinion, not that great, or at least certainly for Hallmark. And it was going to make my job really hard, but that's what Bill chose after we pitched both, So it was just being logical of, I think a murder mystery series. And I know why, right? Because I was also wanting it to act as a backdoor pilot for a potential TV series. Because like I also said, what Hallmark desperately needs to do, I can't believe they haven't done it, is they need to have a procedural. They need to have their version of Castle. It's light, it's fun, it's a case of the week, so you don't have to worry about your engine and get all caught up in drama, which I think they're always tied. They got one arm tied behind their back doing dramas because they can't do a lot. Right, with their mandate. It's got to be soft. It's got to be treacly and earnest. And that just is the kiss of death with soap operas to a degree. It can work before One Calls the Heart, because that's a different genre. That's Little House on the Prairie. And you don't need any of the heavier hitting stuff for that, right? doing a nighttime soap in Hallmark is hard. It's hard to keep it interesting. Case of the week, it's easy. It's not easy, but it takes care of itself, right? And Castle was a multi-year People's Choice Award winner for a reason. It had stellar casting with Nathan and Stana, and then it had fantastic writing, and sometimes you just get magic in a bottle, right? And there you go. And so that was what I was trying to create. And I told them, look, I'm going to give you Castle in a Hallmark bow. I'm going to tailor it. I'm going to take out a little bit of the sexual innuendo stuff, tone it down. I'm going to take out the blood. But we're going to have a case of the week. It's going to be fun. Just let me be silly and have a little bit of fun and be a man-child. And Brooke will do all the rest. And I guarantee you, with Becky overseeing this, coming from Primetime, award-winning writer, she's going to deliver you something you haven't done before. And they sat all over it and they killed it. And so we couldn't deliver anything. I was always disappointed with the Gourmets. They were never very good, in my opinion. I mean, we had moments that are like, oh, that's cute, whatever, but they're nothing like what they were supposed to be, which is a shame. But yeah, so that was reminding me there that's why it was a case. It was supposed to be hopefully a TV series, but at least you get a murder mystery franchise out of it. And so if you look back, you can see it's totally got the engine of Castle and the police station, which is why I spent so much time on that police station in production design. That's as good a police station as Hallmark has ever done on their budgets, right? Like we only have like $5 to try and make a primetime TV series look. And I think the team did a really good job, from the lighting design to art department, the cinematography. It was pretty darn good. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's funny. You just said, I know you've had your challenges with the Gourmet because you had this vision and it just didn't quite achieve it. But which of the 5 was your favorite?
I don't know. The first one, simply because it was my first time wearing all hats. Beck and I had sold pilots before, but they didn't go. So this one was in production. I'm the exec producer, and I'm really doing the exec producing, right? A lot of Hallmark actors get like a producer title, but they're total vanity titles. They're not actually doing anything other than like, I don't like this line. That's a different thing. That's like when you just throw an actor a bone to keep him happy. I'm literally selling the project. I'm selling it in the room. I'm developing it as the writer. I'm going through all of the notes, which is just such an awful experience there. I'm getting it to green light, which is hard. You make so many compromises. Then I'm doing pre-production. And it was a huge challenge because we're creating the world for the first time. We don't know what this police station is going to look like. That's got to be there for every episode after. I got it through casting. I didn't even have a Maggie yet. And I'm literally the one making the decisions, which is great. Like, I'll bag on Hallmark, but you know what was really great about Hallmark always? They really, and I really want to make the point, because I do have PTSD, but to their credit, they really let me grow as a producer. I didn't necessarily grow as a writer, other than you learn how to pivot. And pivot is I'm like Ross on Friends. Pivot, like nonstop pivoting. And that's a skill set, though. That is a skill set that no matter where you are, no matter what network or studio you're at, you're always going to be crapped on. You're going to have to make really difficult decisions and cuts and changes that you don't want to do, and that, in your opinion, make it worse. But that happens at every network. Hallmark really let me grow as a producer, and most of the decisions were mine, or made with Becky, always with Becky, or made with Joel Rice at Muse around budget. Joel really let me make creative decisions. It would only reel me in with like, yeah, we can't do that. Let's figure out how we can afford this or that, right? And yeah, you have your battles over every thing with the network on, like, even literally wardrobe and like just everything. But I got to grow as a producer, and I'm really thankful for that, And the challenges have made me grow as a producer and artist. I think it was more painful than it needed to be, but I'm also more passionate. And if I'm going to be in all fairness, perhaps I'm a little immature in some of this. Becky is far better at being political in dealing with massaging notes, because as she and any experienced writer will say, what is the note beneath the note? All writers listening to this, Remember that line. What is the note behind the note? Because you can often talk with them, find out what is your real concern, because it actually might not need to be addressed the way you're suggesting. What if we do it this way? If that's your real concern, you first have to find out what is your real concern, because I don't think it's what you're saying. Then you can get to a much more conciliatory compromise that won't necessarily gut us, and you'll still get what you need. The note behind the note. Every writer knows that. Becky's far better at it. I tend to be a little hot-headed during development when I really feel I'm right, and I really feel that I'm taking note from someone I just think is completely off the deep end. I have no problem compromising on logistics, and we can talk about that. There's so many logistical compromises I've had to make. Like GD4 was just a complete mess, and it's a boring movie because of the things that we could talk about. But when it comes to just money and I can't do that, hey, no problem. I totally get that, right? When it's like you've hired a gourmand who can't label, who can't talk about a fancy wine or a fancy dish, who can't like classical music, who's not allowed to like this or that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like that has nothing to do with anything. That's just you not liking it. It has nothing to do with whether the audience isn't going to like it, because the audience actually really likes Frasier, as I said in the last episode. They really like Monk. So don't tell me, and you air it on your network. Don't tell me that I can't do it because you air it in these other shows. So why am I not allowed to do it? That's when I get irrationally irritated, because it just seems foolish. And they can't defend their position because I know it's foolish. It's just because Bill didn't like it. And they couldn't say, well, Bill doesn't like it. Bill wants him to like football. And again, Bill shouldn't be in development because he didn't get it. He buys a material, but he doesn't actually know what it means. Like when he orders Cedar Cove, but he tells his showrunner, we can't have conflict. What are you talking about? You've ordered a TV series. You understand the first principle of storytelling, going all the way back to Greek theater, is conflict.
Right.
You can't tell a story without conflict. And he's literally telling the showrunner of 40 years, yeah, we don't do that here. So when I'm up against that, I lose my shit. I do. I'm sorry. I get a little feisty and I push back. Becky is much more mature and far better at massaging idiocy. I lose it. But then once we're in production, then I become everybody's best friend, because then it's just usually problem solving in numbers. And I get very calm in the face of catastrophe. Joel Rice, some of his best compliments about me are really, you're like me, you get very calm in the face of disaster. and you're going to have disasters in production and pre-production. And so that's when I just, yeah, what do we have to do? You roll up your sleeves. Got to get rid of that. Yep, got to get rid of that, because the other choice is you just shut down. There is no movie. No one gets paid. Everyone loses their jobs. And I'll do, as I was saying before we started, I'm there for everybody else once we are working. I want everyone to have a great experience. I want them to be proud of their work. I want them to know how much I appreciate them. That's why I write those handwritten notes to every single cast member that ever comes on the set of anything I'm working on. I want them to know how much I appreciate their work. And aren't we lucky to be working? Let's have fun. Let's do great work. But let's have fun and know that we're not curing cancer here, okay? We're really lucky to be working. And that's what I hope people pull away from having worked with me, whether I'm just like a day player or I'm in a more senior position. But I am a bit difficult in development when I'm really defending my vision.
Well, Sleuther fans, I hope you enjoyed the first part of this conversation that we have with Dylan Neal. Once again, he doesn't hold things back. He tells it like it is. Really fascinating stuff. Make sure you come back next week for part 2, where we really do break down each of the episodes. And I tell you what, it's going to be every bit as fascinating. Tons of behind the scenes. information, things that you just had no idea that was going on that really took to make those 5 episodes of Gourmet Detectives. So once again, hope you enjoyed this one. Tune in next week when we talk to Dylan again and share that second half.